So Helloween has announced the new album title and track listing. The name of the album is called Giants and Monsters, and it comes out August 29th, 2025. And they have released that track listing. I'm putting it up right here. And I have a lot to say about this album. First of all, before I get into what I'm about to talk about, let me talk about how intriguing and how amazing the story of this band actually is. You know, Helloween has one of the most interesting stories of any band that has ever existed, ever, especially in the heavy metal scene. And I think before I get into the reason why I think this next album will be better than the last one, I want to talk a little bit about how amazing the story of this band actually is. So Helloween, of course, made their big impact with Walls of Jericho, first couple Keeper albums, and they really had an impact on the heavy metal scene, especially in Europe. I mean, a lot of people here in the States obviously have been inspired by them, but they really had a huge influence on the European power metal scene and just European metal in general. You can't deny it. A lot of people will cite them as an influence. Just everything about this band on those first 3 full-length albums really has just become a huge influence over the scene in general. And they are considered a very legendary heavy metal band by so many people out there. And it's interesting to see what they have done with this Pumpkins United thing since it happened. You know, they're like probably the only heavy metal band to bring back their former lead singer. And technically, Kai, you can count him as a former lead singer because he sang in the first album and the first EP. You bring your 2 former singers back, one of whom is also a former guitar player in the band. You don't fire anybody. You bring them back in the band, and Helloween basically created one of the greatest live shows I have ever seen. I've been to a lot of concerts in my lifetime, but to watch Michael Kiske and Andy Darris go up on stage and do what they do live, watching Kai Hansen and Michael Wyketh and Sasha Gerstner playing guitar together, watching Kai go on stage and sing, along with Marcus Grauskopf, who's probably one of the greatest bass players I've ever heard, and Danny Loblo, who is one of the most phenomenal drummers I've ever heard. This is probably, in my opinion, the most positive thing that has happened in the heavy metal scene within the last 10 years, and probably one of, if not the most unique live show I have ever seen. And the fact that that has gone over very, very well with everybody, the fact that it's still going on, and for me personally, I can essentially say that most likely this is how the band will finish their career. It is an incredible story. However, I want to point out another amazing part of this story that sort of gets overlooked. And that's the story of what led to this band's success. What led to the consistency that this band has had over the last 30 years. Folks, it starts in 1994 with Master of the Rings. So let me give you a little bit of context. Obviously, we know that the 1990s, it was a very, very bad time for heavy metal. You had a lot of replacement singers. A lot of those replacement singers in many of these bands did not last that long. However, Andy Darris joining the band in 1994 and the success they were able to achieve as a band is truly one of the most remarkable parts of this story that people seem to forget about. So obviously, Helloween was at their lowest point after the Chameleon album. As far as popularity was concerned, they had the lawsuit back then They were just literally coming off some very, very bad times in the history of this band. And Andy Darris joins the band, and they rebuilt the audience this band used to have. Throughout the 1990s, throughout the worst time period in existence for hard rock and heavy metal. And that consistency since 1994 has carried on through all the way till now. Not only that, but what makes the story even more amazing is the fact that Andy Darris replaced a very beloved singer in Kai Hansen. And what's even crazier about that is the fact that he sounds completely different from Michael Kiske, and they found that success. Now, obviously, management does play a role in that. Other guys in a band play a role in that. But most bands, folks, and you know how this goes, when a new singer joins, there's always a huge backlash against that new singer, or people just aren't interested in the band anymore. And to me, it felt like the opposite happened. When Andy joined and Master of the Rings came out, and Tom of the Oath came out, and Better Than Raw came out, these albums come out, and the interest in the band grows quite a bit. And that man has now been in that band for 30 years. And truthfully, when you look back at their discography, there aren't really many bands out there that are as consistent over a 30-year stretch as Helloween has been. They've grown their audience. They have found success again. And then, probably the best ending of any story you can think of, you bring back you basically bring back one of the singers the one singer he replaced, and another founding member / guitar player. And you basically have one of the most incredible live shows that has ever existed in the heavy metal scene. And they grew that audience in the very beginning during the worst decade for heavy metal music. You know, I've been privileged over the last 27 years to be able to watch this unfold. From the standpoint that I've always been in with these guys, it's truly a remarkable story. It seriously is one of the most remarkable stories in the history of the heavy metal scene, because it's so atypical with the way everything has happened. And if you think about it, aside from adding two people, two former members of the band back into the band with Michael Kiske and Kai Hansen, they haven't had any real turnover in over 20 years. I think that's absolutely phenomenally amazing, because that is not common either. But this is a band that, when they say that you never get to meet, there's the old saying, if you meet your heroes, you might be disappointed. Folks, I can tell you that I've met my heroes with these guys, and I was not disappointed and never have been disappointed. Now, moving on to the rest of this segment, let me tell all of you why I believe this next Helloween album, Giants and Monsters, is going to be better than the self-titled album that came out in 2021. First of all, let's talk about the amount of time between when these albums were recorded and released. So keep in mind that the self-titled Helloween album, it came out in 2021. It was actually, I believe, slated to come out in 2020, which means that most of that material was probably written in 2019 and 2020. So they have had a lot of time to write songs, and the guys who are the main songwriters in the band had plenty of time to write that material, reevaluate that material, and refine it. I think that's number one. The other reason I think that this next album is going to be better than its predecessor is because they've already made one album together as a 7-piece, meaning that you have all of those experiences together from the previous record. You get to know people's nuances. What does Michael Kiske like to sing? What does Kai like to sing? What kind of music do these guys sound? What kind of songs do these guys sound the best? As far as like what kind of music might fit their voice the best. The whole experience of making that self-titled album, they can now go into the studio more confident than they were on this previous record. In fact, Andy Darris said the exact same thing in an interview that we did December of 2024. Check out this interview clip when I asked him, what was it that you learned from the previous record that you basically took into this upcoming album, Giants and Monsters? Check out this clip. Obviously, it's always a learning curve to go into making one of these albums, especially with two new people. Were there a lot of things you learned from the last album and recording it that you said, hey, we're going to do this better the next time? Did you bring a lot of that into this next record?
Yeah, I think the main keyword would be confidence.
Okay.
So last album, we had to get to know each other in that new setup lineup, how to work with him, how to work here, and blah blah blah. And this time we just realized, okay, actually everybody has such great ideas. Just don't control each other's. We don't need to actually stick in a studio for pre-production for 2 months because everybody did it for himself.
Yeah.
Let's just listen to it and said, wow, cool. So this time we've been some lazy bags actually and just said, pre-production, we just do ourselves back at home, everybody in his own studio, and we just take the technique we are given. So internet is great and you can have live sessions online, and that made life so much easier because everybody is just relieved that he may stay at home. You still work hard, but you're at home. And as we all know, when you're at home, work doesn't hurt that much so, as being back in the studio again somewhere in the world, but not with your family. Mm-hmm. And nowadays you can actually have your family life. You have your 8-9 hours per day in the studio. You yourself decide when you make a break or when you go and have a meal with your lady or go down to the beach in my case. That makes life so much easier and much more enjoyable than sitting in a freaking studio again and again and again, each and every day for 2 months just for a pre-production, which you could easily do at home together.
Yeah.
So this time, I have to say, this confidence that we earned for each other, that helped a lot to make things even more easygoing. And I think that's exactly what you listen. When you go through the songs and you listen to them, you feel that easiness, this wow, okay, cool, I love it. So that's the way to go. I don't want to say that I want to be back at home when I'm on tour. So I hate the idea of laser shows or something like that.
No. Yeah.
So as long as I can walk, I want to be on stage. But production-wise, I have to say, I love the technique we have nowadays.
And that's Andy Darris talking about what the mentality was that the band had going in and recording this next Helloween album. And that's exactly that. You have more confidence. And obviously, one of the things that I pointed out is that they had a lot more time to write music. Just because of the delays. You had the delay in touring because of COVID. The album came out later than it probably would have been because of COVID. So all the delays caused that, and you just have more time to write that music. So I think this next record is going to be phenomenal. Now, a lot of people know that there was a listening session in Amsterdam. I know one person who was there who says he thinks the album is absolutely incredible and that it will definitely not disappoint. However, most of us, myself included at the time of this recording, have not heard the album. So if you want a glimpse of what the album might sound like from Andy Darris' perspective, here's another interview clip from the interview Andy and I did back in December 2024, where he talks about what the album sounds like from his perspective. Check out this clip. How would you say this album, the upcoming album, is different? What are the differences between this one and the self-titled album? Which, the self-titled album came out probably a year later than it should have because of the whole pandemic thing. And how would you compare this upcoming album to the self-titled record?
I'd say it's much more easy listening because there's less constructed stuff on it. It's more flowing with the wind, so to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very positive. So I would rather say it's more Happy Helloween than the other album. I think it's a bit more, the flow is for my taste, not as edgy as the last album, which was cool, like edgy stuff.
Yeah.
But I think we should have more or less some counterpart to edgy, more exhausting things. Like the last album for me was great to listen through. It was edgy, it was heavy, it was complicated here and there. But after listening to it, then I needed a pause. It was very extensive. What's the right word? I'm only a German here. It was exhausting.
Yeah, I gotcha.
After this album, I needed some break. Put it that way. I loved it. I still love it, but it's demanding.
Yeah,
I think the next album would be much more easy listening. I think much more enjoyable to sing along. There are lots of parts in there, so I would rather describe it as a more happy Helloween album.
Yeah,
that would be the best description.
Yeah, I would say there was some darker stuff on the self-titled album. It's almost kind of like, when, the Dark Ride had a lot of darker elements on it, and then you went to Rabbit Don't Come Easy, which had more, I guess, happier elements. It's probably the best way. You still had a little bit of that dark edge on Rabbit, but you kind of went a little more traditional, I guess. Like when you hear Just a Little Sign, and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to describe because there are lots of speedy and heavy things on it. But when I listen through it, I feel good. I mean, that's a good sign. Not that I felt bad when I listened to the last album. That's not what I mean.
Oh, I gotcha.
Don't twist my words.
I will not do that.
It's fun. I listen to it and it's fun. Definitely.
And that is Andy Darris describing this next upcoming Helloween album. Now, a few of us saw Kai Hansen going on Facebook, posting a video, basically playing like 1 or 2 second clips from this album. But folks, I have all the confidence in the world it's going to be better than the self-titled one. The self-titled one had some great stuff on it. Songs like Fear of the Fallen, songs like Robot King, Skyfall, Best Time, Indestructible, Mass Pollution, just great songs. I think this next one, I can't wait to hear it because I really think it's going to be that good. So with that said, hopefully a single comes out soon, which I probably, if I'm going to theorize here, probably it's going to come out soon. And when it comes out, I will be talking about it, of course, obviously. So this is such an amazing story. This band has such an interesting history, and it's going to be interesting to see how the next chapter of Pumpkins United, as we call it, plays out. Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching, and if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video, and if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.